Welcome to the village of Indian Hill, one of the most prestigious areas in all of Ohio and really this general region. We're so excited today because we are going to dive into what makes Indian Hill so special. So spend a few minutes with us to learn everything about Indian Hill and why, heck, you may want to live here very soon. So Indian Hill is nestled in the lush greenery of the eastern portion of Cincinnati. It's about 13 miles away from downtown Cincinnati. And what's important there is you look at the history. So originally inhabited by the Native American tribes, around the early 20th century is when Indian Hill really started to become developed. So there's one really big name, which is why we are where we are, and that's John Emery. John Emery, right after the Great Depression, really is one of the predominant names in the development of all of Cincinnati, notably the downtown Cincinnati area. And we're actually standing here in front of the Peterloon Mansion, which is an iconic place here in Indian Hill. John Emery actually built this home in 1928. It took several years to complete, but it's on an incredible piece of property right off of Hopewell and really backing up into Remington Road. But what's interesting is in the 20th century, John began assembling a number of properties over here. And obviously over the years became hundreds and thousands of acres of property that now some of which is developed and some of which is still pristine, like this property right here, which is actually rented out as a wedding venue and just a really great venue here in Indian Hill to host parties and other different events. So this property is really the essence of what Indian Hill is all about. Big, large, rural tracts of ground, big trees, gorgeous hills. That's what Indian Hill boasts. And really that's what the setting is and what people are really desiring as they move into Indian Hill. Large acreage tracts, so anything from 1, 3, 5 acre parcels. And as you move in here, you'll notice they don't get any smaller than that. In fact, there's actually no commercial property in all of Indian Hill. And if you're curious, yes, there's about 6,000 people that live in Indian Hill. It's incorporated as a city. So I think technically it's actually called the city of the village of Indian Hill, but we call it the village. And really that's what people love about living here in Indian Hill. So let's back up for a second. I mentioned John Emery. John Emery is obviously one of the biggest and most well-known Cincinnati developers, but it's hard to do a real estate video without talking about John and really a video about Indian Hill because so much revolves around that. So as we sit here at the Peterloon Mansion, what we want to really mention is that he was the developer of the Carew Tower, Terrace Plaza. He did so much for the city of Cincinnati to grow and expand, and originally as a New York City native, bringing all of that back to Cincinnati and building one of these estates that was really meant to rival some of the largest and grandest houses in all of Europe and all of America. It made Cincinnati something special, and he decided he was going to invest here and really help building the neighborhood up, building the region up to be a contender with so many other cities. So let's talk about the setting when it comes down to it. As I mentioned, the 1, 3, and 5 acre home sites, and really those are the lots. You don't get any smaller than 1 acre lots, with the exception of some non-conforming home sites that they really popped up over time. But when it comes to the setting, this is what you get. This is the beauty of Indian Hill. This is why people love to live here. As you drive down winding streets like Spooky Hollow or Bloom or countless others, this is really what you're getting. This is the beauty and the ambiance. And they're all 2-lane roads that are very quietly traveled, but you have houses that sit off the streets. You have gorgeous estates as you drive in and around. But the setting is really what drives people to want to live here. So besides the setting and the winding streets and just the overall disposition of all of Indian Hill, let's talk about the amenities, because the amenities are really what drive people here and what keep them. So the very first one I'm gonna lean off with, which is gonna be a surprise, is the services. I mean, who talks about the services within a city? Well, at least not on a YouTube video, right? Well, on this video, we wanna talk about them because it's really special. You have the Indian Hill water service, and you also have the trash and recycling service. What's unique about Indian Hill is because there's these large estates, their trash service actually comes to your driveway. And prior to COVID, they would actually go into your garage, pull out your trash and recycling and take them into the trucks, drive them off to the bigger trucks. It's really impressive. And you'll actually hear later on in the video from Laura, who actually talks about her individual trash and recycling folks who are awesome because you know them by name, you get to appreciate everything they do. They really are part of the community with us and make it so great. So that's just one of them. Plus I'll add in the bonus of, we actually have an app. You can hit an app button, it'll do a special pickup. So maybe you have some extra brush that needs to be taken away, or you have some trash. They come and pick it up and really take care of that for you. So that's one of the special items. We also hit on the Indian Hill water service. Well, of course, that you get the water and it's obviously very, very well maintained. But what comes with that is Grand Valley, which is my personal favorite part of Indian Hill as far as an amenity. Grand Valley is a 379-acre site that's located right off Glendale Milford, so just about where we are sitting here today, about 5 minutes away. And it has ponds, hiking trails. It's part of a massive restoration of this site just when it comes to the natural landscape and restoring what it was. And it's really fantastic because you can go over there, you can rent canoes and go out there and go hiking. I take my dogs and my kids out there all the time. It's one of my favorite parts about Indian Hill. But to go there, you obviously have to have a little key card that when you move in, or if you're a member of Indian Hill Water Service, which does go outside. So Laura, we've talked so much on this video about just why it's so great to live in Indian Hill, but you've lived here for, well, decades.
Basically my whole life.
Yes. So yep. I wanted no better person to explain about living in Indian Hill than you.
So I grew up here and am an avid equestrian, and we had horses at our house growing up. And I think the thing that's not talked about is all the bridle trails and conservation of green space, and how the village has an entire section of land that they maintain and take care of, and people can donate to, and they make it into horse trails for the public to buy a bridle pass, and then the village maintenance department helps take care of it, and all of the local conservation groups also chip in and try to take care of it to keep them going.
You're absolutely right. And we've talked about the maintenance groups and obviously the operation of Indian Hill.
Right.
But that's one of the best part of Tree Falls. They're out there in no time. They take such pride in this community.
Right. And they do everything from maintaining the baseball fields to the trails to, you know, trash pickup and delivery. So they're a huge part of a bonus benefit to living in the village.
So we were talking a little bit before this about names. What is the name of your trash guy?
Oh gosh, well, I know Ken is our head trash maintenance department guy, and actually we have more talk with them just because of the trails and, the maintenance. But Billy just came to our house and picked up a special delivery,
well, I had to
or a
say
special
that.
pickup.
Yes, because it's the same folks, and they are literally the best folks you could ever imagine. They're
very responsive.
Super responsive. In fact, we have an app that we can request special pickups.
Right.
But as far as people goes, it's just the quality that we get here.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and they're very involved. Like when we have the local horse show that's once a year, the fire department participated, the village was there working on it all week beforehand. So it really is like a whole community effort, not just the Camargo Hunt that puts it on.
That's just it. And as two residents of Indian Hill, that's why we love it. I didn't grow up here, but I've happened to live here for the past 9 or 10 years.
Yeah.
You've lived here as my wife for decades, since you were really young. And I think it's a testament for how great the community is. So where some communities have sidewalks and other walking trails, the Indian Hill area actually has bridle trails. So there are dozens and dozens of miles of bridle trails that meander all through Indian Hill. Some onto private property, some throughout some of the green space, and it's really a unique portion of living here in Indian Hill. It's used quite often, and really when you'll notice is it's very, very, very well maintained. So these trails are clean, they're clear. They're not meant for walking, they're meant for the horses, but you'll see them crossing streets over like we mentioned before. And a little fact that I forgot to mention earlier, if you couldn't tell already, most of the street names here in Indian Hill are actually named after Indian tribes and the Indian culture. So it's something really unique, and really the whole vibe of Indian Hill really leans off of that fact and pays tribute to that historical relevance. So it's virtually impossible to talk about Indian Hill without talking about the school district. It is constantly rated as one of the #1 school districts here in the city of Cincinnati, in the state of Ohio, and really in the country. It can be somewhere anywhere in the top 5 in the state of Ohio routinely, and you always see it as one of the top suburbs. And that's really what makes Indian Hill special. And I'm fortunate to have my kids over at the Indian Hill School District. And Country Day is also another very large part of the community. Located in Indian Hill, my kids started off at Country Day and then they're moving their way into Indian Hill School District. But Indian Hill is really sought after and why people love living here. And with a overall population of just over 6,000 people, according to the 2020 census, it's not a huge school district. You have a variety of schools that constantly get investment from the community. We'll talk about tax rate here in a little bit, but it's really important because the money they get from their taxes is being poured right back into the school district and really into the buildings. So gosh, the primary, the elementary, the high school, they're all getting big, massive investments to build new buildings, and it's very impressive. And it's, again, one of the reasons why some of their different activities and their extracurriculars are so well maintained and so well provided to the community that people really come from many locations just to be a part of this highly rated school district. So as you do any video about real estate and a community, it's hard to not talk about property taxes and the tax rate and all that sort of thing. So we're gonna zoom out for a second and take it all in because nobody needs to hear me talking about property taxes. But really, when you look at the Village of Indian Hill, our property tax rate is one of the lowest around. And I mean low. People are always impressed just how low it really is. Yes, property values are high. We'll talk about that in a moment. But when it comes to property taxes, it's some of the lowest in not only the city, but the region, and really a compelling moment or compelling part to live here in Indian Hill. The second part is the income tax rate. As we mentioned, this is a city, even though it's the city of the Village of Indian Hill. It is a city, and because it's a city, there is a income tax rate. So that income tax rate, we're sitting here in 2024, is 0.45. Now, a lot of other areas, city of Montgomery's 1%, the city of Cincinnati, I believe, is a little bit over 2%. So what's unique and what I love about Indian Hill is every year we get a letter where they reestablish what that rate is based on what they have in the reserves, and they decide what that rate's gonna be. So if they don't need more money, they're not gonna take more money from you as a resident of Indian Hill. So 0.45, yes, it takes care of a lot in the Village of Indian Hill. I've never paid that check as part of my taxes and never said, I wonder where this is going, because I know just where it's going. And one of the best components about living here in Indian Hill. So tax rate is low on both accounts, property tax and income tax. So let's dive into the real estate market. Here in the Village of Indian Hill, it's much different than any other community. And as I stand right now, I'm actually almost on the border of Indian Hill and Montgomery. So I'm a stone's throw away, or probably more like a long driver away from Montgomery Road. But here, this community is actually called the Meadows at Peterloon. It's a newly developed community as of about 2020 or so, with a number of new home sites. This is actually part of the John Emery property, Peterloon. And I say that because this all used to be part of John Emery's property when we put everything all together. So we just took a little field trip away from the Peterloon mansion, but we are actually still on the Peterloon old property, because what this was all assembled by John Emery. And yes, we're on the border of Montgomery, of course, as I mentioned, but this is all part of that original property. This has since been developed into the Meadows of Peterloon. And that's a number of different home sites with brand new homes like you're seeing all around you. So you're seeing homes that are being built actively, ones that have been developed and built over the past 2 to 3 years. But the unique part of living over here is this is brand new custom homes here in Indian Hill. What you're finding on the custom home scene is anything from $2 million up to $10, $15 million here in Indian Hill. They're quite expensive. And that's because the lots themselves start anywhere from $750,000 to well over $2 million for just the land itself. So even though we're talking about new construction, the vast majority of homes here in Indian Hill are not new construction. There's established estates that sell and transfer. Now I'm going to point out some numbers for you because I really feel like that's important, because you look at the sheer volume of home sales. So in 2024, there were actually only 79 sales in Indian Hill. Now that may not be every single one, because not all of them actually go through MLS. Some are new construction, some sell off market, but that's 79 home sales. Now in 2024, that is actually 48, and we're sitting here in October of 2024. So 48 compared to 79, we're right around the same end-up sales, probably end up around 70 sales through the year, but that's really important. But here's what's really unique. Let's look at the sale prices of this. So the ranges in 2024 have been $674,000 on the low end, all the way up to $5.8 million on the high end. Now, a little known fact that you may not realize when you're just looking at these numbers is that doesn't include some of the off markets or the sales that do not make it to MLS. Maybe the owners just prefer not to have them be a public record. There's all sorts of reasons. Those ones could be well up over $5.8 million, but they are normally high prices. In fact, the median price of sales this year is actually $1.66 million. So you can see that the price of real estate here in the Village of Indian Hill is quite expensive. Yes, there are new construction options. Lots may range, as I mentioned, from $1 million up when it comes to it. You'll have to consider sewer and other components because these are rural lots. But then when it comes to the actual houses that are selling as far as resales, that can be anywhere from a traditional family style house on a 1 acre lot in a South Clippinger Street, or it could be a 5 acre spread out Cunningham that could be maybe a 10,000 square foot home. So there's a vast difference in the sales of real estate of what type of product is selling. And it's even more important to really have an agent that understands the nuances of that, because there's so many components that go into the real estate sales here in Indian Hill that aren't the same as just buying in a community like, let's take the city of Mason, where you may have communities that are all very conforming similar homes. It's much different in Indian Hill because every home is a little bit unique and a little bit different. So as I mentioned, the highest sale in 2024 so far is $5.8 million. That's a house on Fox Gov. And we talked about property taxes a little earlier, and I'd share with you this number is that's $52,000 a year based on the current market value of that house, which was actually only $4.1 million. It hadn't been assessed because of the new sales price quite that high at 5.8. So $52,000 might sound a lot when it comes to property taxes, but when you compare a $5.8 million or even a $4 million home based on that market value, you may be looking at the same tax rate in the city of Cincinnati for a $2.5 million house because of that higher tax rate. So it's really important to compare apples to apples when looking at all this. So thanks for learning all about Indian Hill. You may be a current resident, you may be a future resident, you may be coming in from somewhere outside of Cincinnati, but we create these videos to help you really understand what the fabric of the community is all about. We're fortunate enough to sell dozens and dozens of homes in Indian Hill each year. In fact, our office is located just a few thousand feet from the Indian Hill-Montgomery border. As I mentioned, you can't have any office space or commercial space in Indian Hill. But if you're out there searching for a home and we can be a resource, please reach out. Our contact information is going to be below. Please like and subscribe our videos. We'd love to do more. And a special thanks to the Peter Loon Foundation for allowing us to shoot on their property and the premises. They are fantastic folks. And you'll see in our video, we actually showed a couple of the developments they have done over the years of the John Emery property that's been developed over the years. We hope to show you those if you ever move to town. But thank you again. We hope to cross paths again soon. Thank you.